The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Welcome to a spooky episode of the Florida Beer Podcast. Ooh, I'm going to stop that right now. Powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. And yes, we are talking about spirits. Not like goose, but actual, spirits. I would say spirits because booze doesn't sound quite as classy now, does it? We've got three amazing spirit manufacturers on the show today. I will recommend that you try all of these because not only are the spirits good themselves, but as usual, each one comes with its own amazing and unique story that we're going to hear about. And the first thing that we are going to hear about is LS Cream Liqueur. You can find these at most big liquor stores here in the state of Florida. It is produced in Jacksonville, even though the founders, Myriam, Jean-Baptiste, and Stephen Charles, are based in Montreal. And if you know anything about Cremas, which is a staple of the Haitian community, this is a liqueur based on that. If you haven't heard of Cremas, think kind of like Coquito, but it's a little bit different, and you're going to hear a little bit more about it from them more than me. So let's listen to them and enjoy. So I'm going to start off not by asking about your drink, but the drink in general, the Cremas. What exactly is this? And can you elaborate a little bit about its importance to Haitian culture in general?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Listen, Cremas is a staple in the Asian community, basically Asian culture. So basically, it's a cream beverage that's made from nutmeg, coconut, vanilla, and cinnamon. It's made with, in Creole, they call it clairin, which is like another term for like a higher proof rum or alcohol, right? So like a 94 proof, like for example, alcohol or some sort. And of course, it's something that's been passed on from generation to generation. Actually, LS Cream is inspired because every family has their twist on that same iconic recipe. The best example I give to people is for Italians, limoncello, right? So for Italians, limoncello is something that's really cultural. You find it in stores, but people can do it at home. And basically the version that you're going to find in stores, well, it has a little twist to it and so forth. And every family adds a little bit of something when they do it at home. And my grandmother's recipe is in a Ziploc right now, on a paper folded with a writing on there. And everybody in the family used to pass this recipe around, and we used to drink it like every Christmas, every holidays, every wedding, that you would find a bottle of Cremas somewhere stashed. And for Asians like me growing up, it's probably the first alcoholic beverage you're going to taste because you always have an uncle at a wedding that's going to come and see you and say, hey, you're 9 years old, but come and drink this, and it's, just playing around. But the history of Cremas is really focused around this cultural icon of, there's a celebration. Cremas is not too far along, across the table,
And one of the things that I had done a little bit of research on Cremas, and it said basically, if you can't taste the coconut, it's just not Cremas.
I think every family has their own twist on it. Me personally, on my side, the coconut aspect of it was not something that was really like something we wanted to focus on. I felt it was more of a disadvantage to have too much of a coconut, but at the same time, there's still coconut in that recipe, right? That's what gives it that unique taste, right? For people that never tasted it, you're going to get that chai, that chai spice feeling when you mix all of that together, which in the end created LS Cream, which is, again, a more, how can I say this, like a more, I used to say a more professional version of Cremas, because Cremas, when you do it at home, is something really thick, you know? And just to give you an idea, the idea came to us like it was like holiday 2011. Right? So it was a long time ago. And we're basically at, family function during the holidays, and we see somebody give a bottle of Cremas to somebody else as a gift. And again, this was a version that was homemade. And it was really at that specific moment that I thought to myself, like, listen, I've been growing up with this drink all my life. I keep hearing about it, and yet I can't go to the store and purchase it myself. And you have to make it. You have to spend hours upon hours stirring something in a pot, like in the kitchen. And, it's fun, but at the end of the day, it's not really user friendly, So we wanted to find a way to make it more accessible to people, And one of the first things we did is we went to a thing with our friends in college. Me and my wife were the only Asian people there. And we actually set up a bottle of Cremas on the, right next to the gin, the vodka and the wine and whatever. And we didn't say nothing to no one. And people started asking questions. They were like, "Oh my God, what's this creamy drink? It's so nice, whatever." And come to find out, we asked questions later. And the only bad things that came out was the fact of the consistency, the fact it was so thick. The other comment that came in was like, because there's sugar in there and spices and so forth. When you look at your glass after taking a sip, you would see the residues on the side of your glass sticking there, and that was not appealing to people, right? So it was sort of like, oh, this is so good, and then you look at your glass and go, what am I drinking? and this is what we wanted to fix for us making LS Cream, which for us is just a cream liquor that's tackling on, the rum chatters of the world, the Baileys of this world, just to give another option on the shelf, bring a little bit more of diversity on the shelves,
And that's a good question, because you did decide to go the cream liquor, whereas you taking a look, obviously, eggnog would be, nowhere near the same recipe, but would be something a little bit similar. And even in the Hispanic community, you take a look at coquito, and there's a lot of dairies and whatnot that will produce non-alcoholic recipe versions of those, or they'll connect with distilleries that will produce maybe a kicked up version. Why did you decide to go specifically the cream liqueur route instead of maybe partnering with a dairy or regional group like that to produce something that's almost exactly what you have experienced with your grandmother?
I think it's just a question of being practical. At the end of the day, like I said, for us, like we have a lot of, we know about other people that do a lot of mass, right? So especially in the Miami area, if you go to a liquor store, you independent liquor store, mostly you will find, some versions of Cremas on the shelf, and they will indicate clearly on their brand, like whatever it is going to be written somewhere Cremas, right? The only problem with that is that, from my understanding, this is still a home, quote unquote, based recipe that they bottle at a specific distillery or, somewhere, and then they sell it to the store. But just to give you an example, you can't really mess around with dairy, because it will separate. It will curdle. There's a shelf life on that, right? So some of those brands, when you go into the store, you would see it separate in front of your eyes on the shelf, which again is not appealing for the consumer. When a lot of people look at a bottle of LS Cream, they see that the bottle is black, it's thick, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, like this is such a nice bottle. Like, I like the fact that you put it black, but the real story behind it is that we had no choice to make it black, because we wanted to protect the product that's inside, even though on record, I can say that, like the official shelf life of a bottle of LS Cream is still to be decided, because we still have a bottle here of 5 years and the bottle is still good. And the reason why is because the process that we use to make a product is we partnered with one of the biggest cream producer, in North America, and basically those guys, they help us with a recipe, and it basically made it like a product that's gluten-free, all natural ingredients, with low lactose and, kosher and so forth. So you have a quality product there, which again explains first of all, the retail price, and also how we differentiate ourselves from the competition, and why we always explain to people that LS Cream is inspired by Cremas and not your, typical grandmother Cremas, because at the end of the day, it's basically not the same thing,
Absolutely. And so when you were taking a look at a place to partner with to produce LS, Jacksonville became the eventual home. Was that because of a cultural diaspora of Haitians in Jacksonville, or just the traditional influx that the Haitian community has made to Florida in general?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for us, we wanted to be closer to, like I said, one of our main markets. So for us, that was really important. So we were really, really happy to be able to partner with our friends in Jacksonville. But again, I think like every day we're getting more pieces of the puzzle ourselves. And, because the goal is for us to be our own distillery, to be able to produce our own batch of LS Cream without having to rely on a third party supplier. So, so don't be surprised if in the coming months, or maybe give us a couple of years, you will hear something about us getting closer to the Miami-Dade, county, and having more control on our production on the bottling side of it.
That's kind of amazing. And how long did it take for you to take the recipe that you have grown up with, your relatives had in the Ziploc bag? How long did it take for you to finally formulate a cream liqueur that you would be confident putting her initials on, that you would be confident kind of putting your family lineage on and releasing?
Yeah, it took a long time, to be honest. I was working full time at the time, and, I had to take some time off to concentrate on the brand and travel and understand, because prior to this, I was in the banking business. I was in the banking industry. I was a mortgage specialist. We had nothing to do with liquor, me and my wife, and she was an executive at another job. And basically, when we embarked on this adventure, we had no idea what we're stepping into, like all the regulations and everything and the paperwork and so forth, and so much time before you can hold that first sample of your bottle. That was like crazy for us to see that. But to answer your question, it took us about like 2 to 3 years. I mean, no. So basically, like I said, the idea came holiday 2011, and then 2012. We got the first samples in 2014, in March 2014, and it's actually with those samples. So we didn't even sell bottles on the shelf yet, but with those samples, we sent them to the WSWA in Vegas, and this is where we won the gold medal. So we were pretty happy to know that, like this product is able to appeal to other people rather than just my family, and, and win medals in competitions in the cream category. So we were pretty confident at that time that we had something good on our hands.
That's such a fantastic win, obviously. But then, of course, once it gets out into the market, and you are doing samples, throughout Florida and whatnot, what has the reaction been from the community, both inside and outside the Haitian community itself?
Listen, the love has been outstanding, like, of course, you're going to hear some people say, oh, yeah, my grandmother's Cremas is better than yours. But again, I think it's that's like anything, whether it's like everybody has this attachment to this recipe because it's so iconic in our culture. But I think we pride ourselves in saying that, no, this is, like I said, this is inspiration because we're elevating Cremas we think to a standard that is more fitting to be in competition with the other big creams in the market. We're basically just saying, when you go to brunch, they offer you 2 types of orange juice, right? They offer you fresh pressed orange juice, and they offer you Tropicana, right? And we're just saying to people, LS Cream is more on the Tropicana side of it, where we can mass produce using this heritage, using this taste profile, and just run with it and just make another cream that's there so that when people, like I said, the no-brainers of going to buy your Bailey's bottle to make some type of recipe or just to put in your coffee and whatever, well, now you're going to have the LS Cream right next to it, which is going to ask you to really think, okay, like, am I taking Bailey's this time or am I taking LS? And if we do our job right and we do our marketing right and our PR right, more people are going to learn about it and we're going to be able to take our place in the market.
Yeah. And are you trying to market specifically towards South Florida, specifically towards a specific community, or are you really looking at just a broad regional sort of footprint?
I mean, if the question is like if we're only concentrating on South Florida, no, we're expanding everywhere. So, of course, in our own town of Montreal, Canada, we're already able here through the SAQ, which is a liquor board similar to the control states in the U.S., and we're also in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. We're getting into Georgia. We're getting to D.C., Maryland, Texas, California. So, yeah, our goal is to be everywhere. And again, one of our missions is to make people discover the Haitian culture through the story of Cremas through LS Cream.
Yeah, that's something that I really was interested about because, obviously the Florida Beer Podcast is a very proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, and our executive producer and Grand High, our visionary Jeremy Lagonier is of Haitian descent. You and your wife are of Haitian descent. And one of the things that you mentioned before we started recording was that even though people don't really realize it, they are surrounded and influenced by Haitian culture. Can you explain that a little bit more and how you want LS Cream Liqueur to be a part of that influence?
I mean, just to give you a quick example of something recent we did, it was Black History Month. And, like everybody is highlighting, great African-American, people that did, extraordinary stuff. And us on our side, we said, well, why don't we put the Asian dynamic into this? So, I mean, we already knew this, but, we started to let people know about African Americans, but with Asian, how can I say this, lineage attached to it. So for example, Michel Basquiat, which is the famous, painter,
artist,
which is, of course, is of Asian descent. So again, you have here somebody that influenced, the American culture, but using of course, the Asian background behind it. Or Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, which is the founder of Chicago, which was somebody that came from Haiti directly. So, and of course, just thinking about Haiti as the first republic to have a successful rebellion against slavery, against the French. So this is all the stuff that at the end of the day, this is all shaping us. This is shaping our culture. This is shaping, who we are. This is a part of history that even though it is, most people know, I feel that a lot of people don't know, that, and we can use that to our advantage and put that on the forefront again, using LS Cream.
That's amazing. Now, in terms of the actual liqueur itself, which I have tried and it is utterly fantastic, do you recommend drinking it straight in some fashion, or are there a lot of recipes that people try and contact you and let you know about?
Oh, I mean, well, first of all, for anybody listening that would be purchasing LS Cream, if you go on creamls.com in the cocktail section, we have 4 cocktails there, which is our go-to cocktails. We're going to add more to it. But LS Cream, we're proud to say that when we created the recipe, we used neutral grain spirits. And the reason we did that is because, first of all, we didn't want anybody to say, oh, I don't like rum, or I don't like vodka, or I like whiskey, or for example, as a base, right? So neutral grain spirits means that when you taste LS Cream, what's really more evident to people is that you only taste the spices. Yes, you taste the alcohol, but the spices are really what makes the taste. There's no aftertaste with the alcohol, which means that you can mix it with everything else. You can mix it with rum, vodka, cognac fairly easily, than other creams. So anybody can do any kind of recipes, but of course, coffee is the main, for me, I feel is the main, the main mix that your people are going to do because it's so good with coffee, any type of coffees, espressos and so forth. And I invite people to try and different stuff. And some people use it in recipes, like cake, so forth. They put LS Cream in there too. So yeah, it's pretty versatile.
That's amazing. And I definitely cannot wait to get my hands on some more. Thank you so much for appearing on the podcast. And we look forward to trying some more of those little black bottles pretty soon.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
We're going to end with the cream liqueur and go straight into tequila. But not that kind of tequila. They're good tequilas, and then they're the ones that you do the shots with on Cinco de Mayo. We're not talking about that tequila. We're talking about Anteel Tequila. This is an amazing tequila brand that is now available in the state of Florida. You can find it at most liquor stores in South Florida, or anywhere in the state. You can actually get it mail ordered and sent directly to you. What's neat about them is the co-founder, Nayana Ferguson, is the first black female tequila business owner, in the country. And along with her husband, Don, they have created a brand that has 3 varieties right now. There are more coming, and you're going to learn all about that. You're going to learn all about her story and some amazing facts about tequila that I did not realize. So let's listen to Anteel Tequila and the amazing story they bring to the craft spirits market. Enjoy.
I will start with a question that I think is sort of obvious, but I'm curious as to how you feel, is that your tequila brand is the first black female-owned tequila brand in the United States. Why do you think that took so long? Why do you think there hasn't been more of this before now?
I think I'll take that question. I believe probably because a lot of women or Black women do not think about this space, the spirit industry space. One, it is a male-dominated industry. And I think finding out about tequila, knowing that it is way more to do with tequila than maybe vodka or beer or something like that, because we do have to deal with the Mexican government, the U.S. government. So it's a little bit more complicated and more challenging than just a regular spirit that's not as highly regulated. So that may be, and it may be just because of the stereotypical thought on what tequila is, that they just did not want to get into the space.
Interesting. And yeah, you mentioned a lot of the regulations and everything, but how did you actually come to really get into the spirit? Because I think, Dawn, you were interested in into tequila first, and you sort of brought your wife in there, correct?
You're right. Absolutely. I was a fan of tequila just because it was an underappreciated spirit, so it was the typical, I was drinking Patron, 1800, different brands like that, and went to a bar, and I just happened to find the right bartender that wanted to educate me, because I didn't know anything. It was straight Blanco, white tequila. That was it. And once he educated me what a reposado was, and I think I probably said it wrong many times, resposado, like a lot of people do, and añejo, extra añejo, I fell deeper in love. And that's where, I really, anytime that I would drink, I would particularly drink tequila, one brand exclusively, Don Julio at that time. But what I found was the next day, I felt different. I didn't have the sluggish hangover that most of the time that I would get with whiskey or vodka. And so that's really where things completely changed. And I really switched over to tequila exclusively. So when Nay and I met, obviously, if we were going to enjoy a tasty beverage, I introduced her to tequila, and it kind of went from there.
Interesting. And then, Nayana, one of the things that you are very open about, which I'm definitely happy to see, is that you have survived both pancreatic and breast cancer. And you found that tequila is one of the spirits that you can actually enjoy without putting anything at risk. What is the mechanism behind that?
Well, as Don said, when we met, we started drinking tequilas and we actually started researching more about premium brands. And we were researching tequila and found out that it is made from the agave plant and therefore it's naturally gluten free. We found out that it's very, very low in sugar, carbs, and things like that. And with my health history, we found out that it does not raise my glycemic index. Because me being a pancreatic cancer survivor, I am basically diabetic or pre-diabetic. So I need to watch what I'm putting into my body. And when you research that, you find that other liquors, and not saying that there are no other spirits that are gluten-free, but some of them have either grains or corn. Like corn is actually a sweetener in itself. The regular vegetable is something that is actually naturally sweet. And if you eat too much of it, it could be too much for your body. So it just became me looking at the things that I was drinking to put into my body because, you know, of course, most people, they say you're a cancer survivor. They don't want you to drink, but I'm still human. I still want to have a beverage here and there. And I want to have something that's good for me or that's not as bad. So straight tequila neat does not raise my glycemic index. So that's where that actually came from.
And how much of it is, I guess, when people talk about things like that, when people don't want you to have a drink because of your health history background and people take a look at tequila being a spirit, how difficult has it been to separate what tequila is in terms of its cultural influence and the history and everything that you have to go through to make it imported into the US? How difficult is it to separate that from Cinco de Mayo frat party? Because unfortunately with tequila, it's not so much enjoying this beverage as much as it is, what is it? Lick it, slam it, suck it or something? Yeah.
I know Don can take that. We've had so many just different stories.
Yeah. Even with tastings, we still get tequila. That's still a fan favorite. And everybody's got a tequila story, you know, from back in 1973 when they went on spring break. But I think what's happened is tequila has evolved, and it kind of started with, you know, George Clooney coming into the space and celebrities being able to consume tequila. It started to change that stereotype a little bit. It's still there, unfortunately. It truly is. And when you go on spring break or you go, you know, on vacation, different things like that, you're not drinking premium tequilas. And it really wasn't until Patron back in, I think it was the 90s, that really introduced a premium tequila, their line. That's what they were saying. So it started to change from the Cuervo days, and it's still, you know, an uphill battle. But the sector is really rising. Celebrities are getting more and more into the space with Michael Jordan, LeBron. So it's really changing the scope of how tequila is perceived. And most people are now migrating from those lower end tequilas to the very expensive or, you know, high end premium or super premium luxury brands. So it's starting to change, but it is still slow.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that because the tequila space is really starting to get crowded, and a lot of it is celebrities. The Rock has a tequila. George Clooney has a tequila. I mean, we live in a world where a Jonas brother has a tequila. Now that you have your tequila, when you made the jump, let's do it. How did you decide to differentiate your brand from them? You obviously don't have the name brand recognition yet. So what was it about creating Anteel that you really wanted to do to make sure that it both stood out in the marketplace and also told your story?
So the first thing was trying to figure out if we could do this. So we came up with doing a small batch. You know, Nay actually is a finance person. She is the backbone behind the brand, and she put all the numbers. She found the distillery to work with and all that. But you're right. How do you exist on the shelf when there are so many different spirits? And that's where we kind of made the decision not to go the norm And when we released on the market only in Michigan, we released the world's only coconut lime Blanco tequila, all natural flavors from the meat of the coconut and the lime. And then our reposado, it needed to be a sipping reposado, not one that was a little spicy, one that had a little bit more depth of character. So the barrels that we chose whiskey barrels to rest our reposado. And instead of the average 4 to 5 months in the barrel, we actually do 8 months, which is bordering close to an añejo. So we wanted to test the market and see if the concept would work. And that was the way that we could kind of differentiate ourselves from the rest of the tequilas. And then it came down to bottle, label, logo, all these different things. And if you look at our brand, there's a lot of nuances with our brand that are very different. You know, we don't have the really weird, crazy, hard to hold bottle. We have more of an elegant, streamlined look to it with the label that's metallic. And then our flavors.
Yeah, especially with the coconut lime, because it's interesting. And I will admit that I fell into this trap as well. I'm so used to rum, and rum has sort of, for better or for worse, and I would say for worse, been inundated with cheap rums with artificial sugar-backed flavors that take it from a spirit almost into a cocktail in a bottle before you even put a mixer or anything in there. Is that something that you specifically knew and tried to avoid? And do you get a lot of confusion about that?
Absolutely. We definitely wanted to avoid the sugary, sweet additives that a lot of those brands, specifically rum, they have. So we really wanted to go away from that. We wanted more natural. And what we did with the coconut lime, which was somewhat subliminal to people, but to us, it made sense, is the people that were shying away from tequila, how could we bring them back? How could we gain them as a customer, a consumer? And everybody loves margaritas. And when we did our research, the coconut margarita was the third most popular flavored margarita in the world. So if we could replicate a flavored vodka, which that sector just took off and blew up, and really kind of do that with tequila and create almost an atmosphere of a cocktail, but no sugars added in a glass, we thought we'd be winning. And I think so far we're doing pretty good with the coconut lime.
I think we are. It is a bestseller.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I've actually been able to try all of the different flavors, and it is absolutely, not only is it good tasting, but it's also nice and smooth. You do see the difference between a quality premium tequila such as yours and versus one of the mass produced 2-gallon jugs that you can get at Costco or whatnot. So you kind of mentioned that you started in your native Detroit, and from there you sort of grew and you're now shipping to Florida and California. Those are very specific locations. It looks like you didn't branch out naturally from what's around Michigan. Why were you choosing those two spots?
Actually, Nay can speak to that because of our importer. They had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, we are a company based in Michigan, but of course our tequila comes from Mexico. And in our plan, we weren't planning on branching outside of Michigan for a couple of years. However, we were getting demand from just many people in different states, and we do have connections in different states, and people wanted to say like, hey, when are you coming to our state? And because of the demand and because of the coconut lime just started flying off the shelves, it really, truly became a bestseller. We looked at it and said, hey, okay, maybe we can do that. California and Florida are actually key states that I know when we researched looking at just top tequila consumer states, and you have to think about states that are a warmer climate, that they're going to drink tequila year round. So we were looking at that as well. And we actually had our launch in California and Florida right before COVID. We had a product in the warehouse and everything, but COVID shut everything down. So we actually kind of had to pivot and relaunch again towards the summer area. But our importer actually has the licensing and things like that for us to be able to launch into those states a little bit easier without getting a distributor right away. So that's something that we were able to do pretty quickly. And then as COVID was going on, we noticed that our sales were going up because I guess everybody was in the house drinking. So our sales actually started tripling in those states because of COVID and everyone just drinking more. And we were able to have our product back in those states. And we did also have to pivot with more social media marketing as well.
So in terms of coming to Florida, you aren't available just in stores. You can't just go to the local grocery store, go to the local liquor store and just pick your stuff up. How difficult has it been specifically coming into the Sunshine State?
It's been relatively difficult getting into every state, especially when you're a small emerging brand. So with MHW, who's our importer, they had the elements, the distribution to be able to launch in California and Florida. But then the pandemic hit, so it slowed down everything that we had already mapped out to do, visit stores, get key salespeople. It just really changed the dynamic. So we adjusted. We found a store that shipped around the country and worked with them so that way people could order online. But in California and Florida, we ended up applying to potentially be carried by Total Wine, which is a pretty big company. And I think it was about a month and a half later, we got the approval and they start you off in a few stores. So in Florida, we're available in Total Wine stores in Southern Florida, in California, all throughout. But then they also approved us for Colorado and Texas. So at the same time that we found, wow, this is going to be really difficult launching into 2 other states during a pandemic, we also had 2 other states join into that, crowd and make it even more difficult. So we did end up getting into Total Wine stores in Colorado, and now we're in Texas. So it's always difficult, but when you can get a mass retailer such as them to bring on your product, it does make it a little bit easier. But the other thing a lot of people don't know is because we are available throughout Florida or California, those 2 states in particular, people can go to a retailer and ask them, like a small liquor store, and say, hey, I've heard of this tequila brand. Can you get it for me? And if they reached out to us via our website, we can place an order for them and have it delivered typically to the store within 3 to 4 days.
Yep.
That's amazing. That's usually something that not too many distillers can do. Now, you can also ship directly to consumers in the state of Florida, correct?
Yes. So we use a store in California and they handle everything for us.
Is that because, I guess, is it possible to send from Michigan to Florida, or how does it work, and how difficult was it to get it set up to where you can, or they can, ship the tequila directly in? Because it's not like sending a postcard. It's a little bit more difficult.
It is. It's a little tricky, and that's why it's much easier to go with a store that actually has done that due diligence to set up to be able to ship to particular states. Now, you can't ship to every single state, but the majority, because there's still some states that have some funky laws. We're not going to name those states, but there are some that are completely, terrible and very difficult to get into. So, but for the most part, you can ship to at least 40 states within America. And thankfully, these stores are set up to do that within the laws and the regulations.
That's amazing. That is amazing. I guess, which is more difficult, getting the product as it is finished and distilled from Mexico to the United States, or shipping it from the United States from one state to another?
I would probably say getting it from Mexico into the United States, just because it's a longer process, because they do need to pick it up from our distillery. And at the distillery, there's a customs agent there that actually checks each pallet as it's going out, checks all its paperwork. And then once that is done, which is usually 24 to 48 hours, then they have to drive it to the border. And then, of course, at the border, there's customs there. And as we know, the border is massive, has massive traffic going on. So that can take a day or two. And then it is depending on where we're shipping, because we do now, when we get a shipment from Mexico, we ship to different states. So the pallets are split up. So we do have some going to California, some going to Florida, some going to Michigan. So it depends on where it's going. And then it usually takes about another 5 to 7 days after it crosses the border. So that takes a lot longer than shipping from possibly California to another state.
And Nayana just described the perfect scenario. Then you have weather.
Yes.
Or you have COVID, where half of the fleet drivers are out for 4 to 6 weeks. So there's all these little things that you just don't think about. But, we have to. Logistics is key to getting our product from where it is. And even during the pandemic, most distilleries in Mexico had to shut down. Ours luckily got the approval to stay open with only half the staff. So that was very unique. So this has been something that has prepared us for almost everything that you can imagine, hopefully. And we've had everything. And for us to grow during a pandemic has been just outstanding.
And it's great that you're able to grow. As you continue to grow, what's going to be coming next? Because, obviously you've got the Blanco on the market, you've got the Reposado on the market, and then you're going gangbusters with the coconut lime. Are you going to decide to continue on and do the Añejo, or are you going to look at other fruits to join the coconut lime?
That is...
I'll let you answer that one. I'll let you answer that one.
Oh boy. So an añejo is definitely on the table. And we don't like to hustle on a crowded block. And there's a lot of añejos out there. What's going to set our añejo apart? And we are working on something that will definitely get us a ton of attention because it hasn't been done before. We can't quite talk about that, but it will be outstanding. Okay. But that will not be next. What will be next is another flavored that does not exist on the market. And we're going to do hopefully a small launch this summer. And that will be the world's only blood orange Blanco tequila made with natural flavors from blood oranges that are grown in Sicily, Italy.
Okay, I'll take a bottle. I'll just go ahead and take it now. Thank you very much.
Well, our thing is too, we hear so many people who are either allergic to coconut or they don't want to try it because they don't like coconut, not knowing that our coconut is different. I have yet to hear anyone say they don't like blood orange.
I know. It's fantastic. So I'm very, very excited for that. Absolutely. And then as you continue to grow, obviously, because you are the first Black female owner of a tequila company, have you started to hear from other Black women that want to do tequila or a rum or a vodka or something else in the spirit industry, kind of asking you for your advice? How did you break down those doors? What did you do to get started? Have you kind of taken on that mentor role with others?
I have participated in several panels and actually Black-owned spirits panels where there are other Black-owned spirits and there is other female owners in vodka and I believe gin and things like that. So it's more of a co-person at this point. I have not taken on a mentor or a mentee in the tequila space. I do know that there are possibly others that are coming into the space, but I I just have not directly been involved with them right now, but I am definitely open because I do feel that it is definitely space for everyone. And we look at it as our tequila is the expression of how we feel tequila should taste and should be. And everyone is different. So someone else coming into the market, theirs is going to be different as well, depending on their expression, how they feel it should taste. So I'm definitely open to that. But right now I don't have a mentee, but I do enjoy speaking on different panels and different webinars about me being in this space and helping others to come into the space and giving ideas and just advice on that.
So it looks like you both have done a lot of growing of the brand and growing with the brand, and it looks like you just have more space to grow with. So thank you both so much for coming on. I am very excited to get back into my coconut lime so I can easily await the Sicilian blood orange. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With our final interview, yes, we will be bringing the spooky back with Dark Door Spirits. Woo, blah, blah. One tequila. Yep, we're going to be in Tampa. And Dark Door Spirits has been around for a few years. They have some awesome spirits that are made and released in the Tampa area. So if you are lucky enough to try them, you definitely send some over my way. And what's interesting about them is, yes, they have their standard gin. They have their signature gin. They have a vodka that has a really great story behind it. But they are also taking craft beer from breweries in the region, and they are distilling that to create new spirits. That's actually how I found out about them. And so we are speaking with co-founder Matt Allen to learn a little bit more, not just about the brands that they make, but how they make them and how they even decided to start distilling beer. Enjoy. So, Matt, the first question that I would have is Tampa and the Tampa Bay region is really known for its craft beer, and yet there are very few distilleries in the area. Why did you and your partners decide to go the distillery route instead of making another craft brewery?
Well, we really love craft beer, but we're kind of looking at the evolution of, I guess, craft beverage in general, and so there was a lot of excitement in the craft spirits world as well that hadn't been tapped yet, especially, we started 5 years ago and there was even less back then. So, yeah, seemed like a great opportunity and a ton of fun.
And so you decided to go ahead and create Dark Door Spirits. With this label, with this company, what kinds of spirits did you really want to bring to the market, and how are you planning on being a little bit different and standing out with some of not only the spirits that are being made on the Gulf Coast, but here in the country?
Sure. We focus on a lot of very classic recipes, like the Spirit of Prohibition gin. Our rye is a very classic rye recipe, but then we do a lot of new stuff, like our Spirit of IPA, where we actually take an IPA beer and distill that into a whiskey. With our gins, we wanted to use real botanicals, not essential oils. That was real important for us to go back to the roots of distilled spirits like that. But at the same time, we use a lot of modern technology with our whiskeys because, for us, it's really about just making really good products in the best way possible. And so that's kind of been the mindset from the beginning. Is there's a lot of ways we can be unique and do unique things by just really focusing on top quality product, I guess. So.
Awesome. And I know that you did mention your sort of, I guess, flagship gin, Spirit of Prohibition. And I found that interesting that it was flavored with lavender as well as all the other botanicals. Where did that come about?
Lavender it's a familiar flavor to a lot of people, but it lends itself really well to cocktails. And so it was a favorite immediately with bartenders because they were able to get into creating unique cocktails with this gin. And then the consumers at home like it for the same reason because, you've got a bit of a cocktail culture happening, even pre-COVID. Obviously, COVID has kind of pushed that along with people drinking at home a little bit more over last year. But pre-COVID, people were getting back into, the cocktail party at home. And the bartenders have been growing that segment as well. You see a lot more of these craft bars in the different restaurants and bar locations. So
It's funny that you mentioned COVID, because one of the things that you apparently did was to take one of your spirits of vodka and you use that as sort of a stopping point or donation point for bartenders, if I'm correct.
We did, yeah. I mean, that's, bartenders that's our people. Yeah, and they were obviously heavily affected with COVID. And we rebranded our vodka. We called it Pandemic at the Disco. And we had a lot of fun with that label too. There's little COVID disco balls hanging out of the coconut trees. There's toilet paper streamers all over the place. We even put masks on our icon, the three-headed dog. But we were doing, we did donations back to from a portion of the sales back to local bartenders guild was the idea behind that, because we just wanted a way to give back to them. So that was really it. Yeah.
And it kind of brings to mind a good question for regional or micro distillers such as yourselves with the craft spirits market. With talking to bars and bartenders, the bottles can stay around for a little while. Is it a difficult sell to have some of these bars decide to give your bottles shelf space in addition to all of the cheaper, more readily known alcohols available? Or are you starting to find that bars, like a lot of craft beer bars, are just starting to search out the local and the small batch?
Yeah, they're definitely searching out and eager to bring in local and small batch. I would venture to guess that we face the same uphill battle that craft breweries do. Is we don't have the marketing budgets of large brands. And our cost to produce is going to be substantially higher than a large brand as well. Of course, our product tastes better and and is made local and has all these benefits. But it's a definite uphill battle, all the way across the board. I mean, and we understand, bars have, they've costs as well, that they're trying to keep a cocktail under, for instance. But what we find is when they bring us in, they start to tell a story of it being a local product. It actually sells, those types of drinks tend to sell better. So.
Gotcha. And it's funny that you mentioned the craft breweries, because not only are you all big fans, but you're actually using craft beer in some of your recipes. One of the main ones that you have is, and I'm curious as to how this is even made, Spirit of IPA, which you start with a base of an IPA from, if I'm correct, Crooked Thumb out in Safety Harbor. How do you get a spirit out of an already existing alcoholic beverage?
Sure. Well, what we do here, if we're going to go make one of our whiskeys, say we're going to make our bourbon or our rye, we essentially make a beer. We make what you would call a distiller's beer, is what we start with. Very similar. We use a mash, which is going to be the grains that we pick for our mash bill. We ferment it the same way. And then in the distillation process, what you're doing is you are, in the very basic sense, you evaporate the alcohol off of the beer, and then that alcohol goes up. We collect it in the pipes and we recondense it back into a liquid so we can drink it. So essentially, we already start with a beer. It's just not necessarily a beer you would want to drink on your own. So if we take that beer base, a craft beer base, and we can do the exact same process on that, and it makes a phenomenal product if you know what you're doing with it. The hops can be a little tricky. So, traditionally, actually, according to the U.S. government, there's no hops in a whiskey.
Gotcha.
So even though our Spirit of IPA or any of our other collaborative products we've made they are whiskeys in all intents and purposes, according to the U.S. government, they are not a whiskey.
Interesting. So
yeah.
You could take a whiskey, you could add hops to it, you could dry hop a whiskey in essence, and that will automatically make it no longer a whiskey to the federal government.
Yeah, I think they've got I think if you did a dry hop afterwards, you could still call it a hop flavored whiskey.
Gotcha.
But because we are distilling the hops, that is no longer considered a whiskey. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of legal stuff we have to deal with when it comes to, the beverage side of the government regulations. So.
And I was going to say that because one of the things that you also have available is a bourbon whiskey. And bourbon, I know, has even more hoops you have to jump through to actually call it a bourbon, if I'm correct.
Yeah. Bourbon is one of the most restricted whiskeys that there is out there, actually. So bourbon by law has to be at least 51% corn. It has to be made in the U.S. It's an American product. It has to go into a brand new charred oak barrel every time. Has to be American white oak. Yeah, so it's one of the more restrictive products that you can make. So
that's amazing. But it's not like you're any stranger to jumping through the hoops, and you've actually just sold out of a recent collaboration, kind of taking the IPA route with Motorworks Brewing out in Bradenton with their, I guess, big hot seller Pulp Friction. So that was Spirit of Friction, right? How did that story kind of come to be?
Well, yeah, we've known the guys over at Motorworks, the whole team over there, for quite a while. About a year and a half ago, we distilled their Midnight Espresso Porter into a whiskey. So we called that one Eye of Midnight, and it was just a fun little project that we were all kind of goofing off, and they're like, "Hey, why don't we try this?" And we gave it a shot, and it turned out really great. And then as the talks kind of continued, probably over multiple glasses of whiskey and beers, we were like, let's do the Pulp Friction. Yeah, there's a ton of grapefruit in that. It's a really awesome beer to begin with. And they're like, let's distill this and let's age it and let's see what happens. And so that is what we did. It's totally different than our Spirit of IPA. And the process we used, while it was somewhat similar, the barreling process we used was completely different for this one, and it just carried through so awesomely. I mean, I hope you've tried it. If you haven't tried it, you've got to stop by, and we'll get you a sample from one of the hiding bottles. But yeah, it is a ton of fun. The way the hops carry through and the grapefruit flavor, we just love it, honestly. So.
Awesome. Now, does that mean that you are kind of willing to be the sort of craft beer distiller for the Tampa area? Do you have any other collaborations like this that are currently in the works or currently aging?
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, we really do. We have so much fun with it. I mean, this is where, our love of craft beer really shines through is what's the worst that could happen, So we take it and we'll distill it and we'll see what we can do. There's a brewery called Three Bridges Brewing down in Venice. We distilled their Skyway IPA and we blended that with our bourbon and barrel aged that together. And that got released out of their restaurant there and sold out. I think it was all sold out by the time it got delivered to them on pre-sale. It's an amazing product. It was so cool. Yeah. We've got a really fun one going on with Green Bench Brewing out of St. Petersburg. So they sent over a smoked lager that we distilled, and it is awesome. It is a really cool whiskey. That's barreled now. We're still letting that age. That'll probably be released later this summer. We've had conversations with lots and lots of breweries. I mean, from tiny ones to all the way up to Cigar City. So there's a lot of fun stuff in the works for sure. So yeah,
that sounds
stay
amazing.
tuned, I guess.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And with the barrels, are you considering programs to where the brewers can then age a beer in the barrels and then send the barrels back to where you can age a spirit in those barrels again and kind of trade them back and forth?
100%. Yeah, we released a product here. We sent one of our barrels early on. We sent a barrel over to Crooked Thumb, and they aged an oatmeal stout in there for about a year.
Wow.
And then they sent it back to us. We put our bourbon, our already aged bourbon in there for another year on top of that. And then we bottled that up, and that was an amazing bourbon. I mean, the characteristics of that stout carried through amazingly. We've got a barrel here as part of the Bottle Your Own Bourbon experience that's had an imperial stout in it with cacao nibs, actually. We have another barrel here that's got our bourbon in it that had apricot vice in there, which turned out so cool. I didn't know how this bourbon would really turn out, but I thought, let's give it a try. When you drink that bourbon, it's like peaches and cream. It is the coolest, most unique product we've done for sure. Yeah, Calusa Brewing, we just got 4 barrels from them that we've put some bourbon in 3 of them, and we've put a rye whiskey in 1 of those barrels. So we'll let those age for a while and see how they turn out, which I'm sure is going to be great. So yeah, we definitely have a barrel program going on with a lot of our partners we're collaborating with. So, and we're always open for more. We love it. It's so much fun, and just that unique barrel finish from the beers just makes a lot of fun projects for sure. So
that sounds amazing. Where can people go to get your spirits? Because I know that you are not statewide yet, unfortunately, much to my chagrin.
Yeah, no, we're not statewide yet. Total Wine carries us in a lot of markets. Then locally in Tampa, Lucan's or West Shore Liquors would be some of the bigger ones. We are in quite a few liquor stores in the territories we're in, and we're expanding into more. We're hoping to be statewide by the end of the year.
Awesome.
Yep. Obviously, you can come up here to the tasting room and gift shop and buy directly from us as well. But, unfortunately, laws don't allow us to ship or anything like that yet. So hopefully one day that'll be available. But, yeah.
Fingers crossed. Hopefully we'll be able to get that soon. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, great chatting with you guys for sure.
So all 3 of those spirits sound absolutely amazing. We've got some great spirits that are coming up from them as well, so I can't wait to try those once they get released. There's definitely a lot of great things that are coming to the state of Florida, and I am proud to be able to cover that. So I hope you enjoyed that as well. If you need details or show notes about today's show, just head to FloridaBeerPodcast.com. We are also a very proud member of the Florida Podcast Network, and if you want to find out more about our show and the other shows that are on the network, all you have to do is go to Facebook and search FPN Insiders to join our closed Facebook group. You can give us all the lowdown on what you've been trying in your area, where you've been, and stuff that we need to search out and put on future episodes as well. So make sure to visit all the great shows on the Florida Podcast Network. If you don't join the FPN Insiders group, I don't know why you wouldn't, you can also go to FloridaPodcastNetwork.com. Florida Beer Podcast is a production of FloridaBeerBlog.com. You can find us at FloridaBeerBlog.com or at FloridaBeerPodcast.com. If you're on the socials, and why wouldn't you be, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Florida Beer Blog. We're on Facebook at FL Beer Blog, or you can email us at FloridaBeerBlog@gmail.com. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Piccola. Executive producer and Grand High Poobah is Jimmy Lagonier. Thank you so much for today's guest for coming on the show. Thank you so much for listening as well if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to us on the podcasting app of your choice. If that podcasting app allows you to give ratings, give us a nice juicy 5 stars. What does it hurt? It just helps us and it helps you and it makes you feel good all over. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back next week with an awesome cigar and beer episode. You won't want to miss it. And drink Florida Craft.